Right now is a very special panel. The world of cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and this tech sector is attracting everybody to the scene, and there are all kinds of female leaders that are emerging right now, and we have 4 of them with us right now. The moderator for this panel is V-Ray, and it's Women in Web3. Please put your hands together for the moderator and the women of the panel.
Hello, BlockDown. Thank you so much for coming. My name is V-Ray. I'm a consultant in the space. I do business development, experience design, and go-to-market strategies. And I'm here with these amazing women. I will let Caroline take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline Genova. I'm the CEO at WiiU, which is one of the main sponsors of the event, but also a multi-chain platform for the NFT market adoption. We're building products and services to bring masses into the space by using UI and UX design, which is very simple for anybody to understand. On the other hand, I'm also initiating a group of Women in Web3 Travels, which enables women to connect at different events in the space and to not be intimidated to coming into the space.
Amazing.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Zoe, my name. I lead growth for the European market for Fala Network, a parachain in the Polkadot ecosystem. And I wear several hats, so I'm also a global ambassador for Polkadot itself. In the ecosystem, doing events, moderating. I was just moderating the event yesterday on building on Polkadot. But I'm also a leader as a COO in my German company, where we actually provide infrastructure for the Polkadot ecosystem. Thanks for having me.
Hi, my name is Zia Word. I'm a founder and, co-founder and managing partner, general partner at Matterblock. We invest in Web3, very early stage. I've been in the space personally since about 2013. A few battle scars, and professionally since 2015. So, you know, I've been around the block, I guess, and I'm so happy to actually be on an all-female panel for once. The first event I ever spoke at, I was literally the only female in the whole speaking lineup. So this is a really refreshing change, and thanks for having me.
Amazing. Yeah, I've been getting good feedback. We were on the VIP catamaran the other day, and someone was like, "Whoa, it's gender balanced at a crypto event." I was like, you know what, it is. And I think the space is really changing in that way, and especially with like NFTs and artists and just the inclusivity of giving people who are part of the mainstream world like a place in Web3, it's really started to shift. So yeah, let's kick this off with, how do you think Web3 is reinventing what it means to be a woman in tech?
So I think, can you hear me well? Yeah, great. I think what it means to be women in tech in Web3, it brings more possibilities for women to join worldwide. The reason why is that because Web3 is fully online and remote, which brings more possibilities for women to even be working from home with their kids and have them the chance to actually join the ecosystem. And I think with that way we can attract more women into this space and not make it only men-oriented as it used to be.
Yeah, very good points. I would add to this that Web3, I mean, we are building a movement, right? Web3 is not only a technology, it's technology focused, but we are in a movement and we are all part of it. And I think, first of all, we should be very proud of building something very new for the world with everyone. And since this opens up the doors for everyone to join, you know? It's not only technology, it's like services, it's like also even in the technology space where everyone is welcomed. And even technology itself doesn't have a gender, right? Technology doesn't have a gender, doesn't have an age, it's not a specific background. So with saying this, I mean, everyone should join and is actually joining the Web3 space. And by building a new space and this environment, we open it up to everyone.
Amazing.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think, you know, there's Well, I mean, you mentioned technology doesn't have a gender. Absolutely not. And I think, in history, sometimes women have been even written out of technology's history, right? Like one of the first computers was actually pretty much engineered by a woman. Yeah, so it's interesting how we're sort of evolving. I think another part of it is that we have this opportunity to build reputation, and kind of to your point, but being remote, but build reputation on chain by doing. And something we were talking about before in our investment panel is, really when you work in Web3, there's a lot of kind of noise and a lot of crap that goes on because of the markets and things like that. But really, the way you produce and extract value is by doing. And we are in such a unique time when doing a lot and putting yourself into a creative output or a technology output or a business development output, that's going to reap the benefits for you individually. And I think why wouldn't females want to do that? It's really important. And like, to your point, it's like the Web3 is a movement, and I see it the same way. It's we're rebuilding sort of a lot of broken systems that exist currently, right? The status quo. The reason that we've come up with this is because those don't work, or they at least are not as valuable. So, it's a movement, and it's reflecting society, right?
Yeah.
And society is 50% women, so.
That's true. And
Why
I mean,
wouldn't
even
you
to
do
this,
that?
I mean, we are building a space where we represent values, right, which are based on a technology. But everyone that's interested in decentralization, data ownership, privacy, democratizing the world and technology, these people are part of the movement and of the world, and not someone that only understands how blockchain works. Of course, they find their specific skill set that they then can put out in the space, and that's what I find beautiful about it.
Absolutely. I think just the innovative nature of the space and the need for hardworking, intelligent people to come in and just like reinvent what this whole culture means really allows the place for receptivity for people of different kinds to step up and play that role.
I would say it's fixed yet, right? Because
Yeah.
That's
we
true.
still. I mean, I tend to have rose-tinted glasses on about the space. I do. I love it, but there's still DAOs being created that won't accept women.
Oh.
Yeah. So we still have ways to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know this is a tough question given the past few days, but what types of projects are you most bullish on?
Okay, I mean, I introduced myself already as ambassador of Polkadot, so of course
Yeah.
the Polkadot ecosystem, right? We just had a beautiful, very cool presentation about Moonbeam, which is EVM compatibility to Ethereum built on Polkadot. So actually any projects that's built in the Polkadot ecosystem that I'm personally bullish on, specifically also projects that are focused on privacy, because my background is in cybersecurity. I always want that data is of course private even on blockchains itself, so any projects that work in this kind of direction I'm personally interested in, and they also are still much more needed in the space. We have, I mean, even Polkadot as well as Kusama network, we have a lot of different and specific parachains. So yeah, this is overall.
For me personally, is project with Tech for Good movement involvement, because I think technology has such a huge potential of bringing something good to the world. And personally, we have WeU Pieces, which is an NFT collection built on Tech for Good movement in collaboration with the United Nations to help refugees from all over the world. And I think, seeing the use cases in that realm and seeing the impact it has on people worldwide, I think that is the most impressive for me to see in the space. So definitely supporting that cause.
Yeah, so I guess our sort of thesis is sort of honed a little bit towards sort of picks and shovels stuff at the moment. Tooling for DAOs and things like that hasn't been solved. There's still a lot of infrastructure that needs upgrading and problems to be solved there that I think, over the next couple of years we might see some good progress in. And I like what you said about about the kind of it's almost going back to Bitcoin's original ideal of kind of for good. I think that got lost a little bit, and it gets lost a lot in the bull markets. But I do like to see, the technology being used in a progressive way to actually really make the world better in some really significant ways. So like, for me, I think governmental things really could do with some great innovation there. And so, yeah, that's all very interesting. It's kind of like big world problems, but it's all very interesting to me.
Just adding to the infrastructure, I think, even with the rise now of metaverses, right? Everything, we need more infrastructure to actually build metaverses, right? Every time there are new ideas coming up and new topics that need also specific infrastructure. And we heard also cool talks about SDKs for metaverses here on this conference. So this is what I personally am also bullish on, because this is what is needed to build actually what we are talking about. So yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the biggest problem with the sort of ICO boom back in the day, is that we didn't have the infrastructure. Great ideas, but the infrastructure didn't exist to actually execute those ideas, and so we ended up with a huge crash that time. And so I think, hopefully we don't have as many fall by the wayside this time around, but yeah, I think there's a lot of progress being made in infrastructure and needed. Yeah.
Well said, yeah. So I'm curious, what has surprised y'all the most about the evolution of Web3 crypto NFTs over the past 2 years?
I think for me personally, it was the switch from the usual PFPs of NFTs to the actual utility of NFTs. I think when I started in the industry, I didn't really believe that the utility behind NFTs will be the direction we will go. But I think that now it completely switched the direction, and I really believe in that utility, that it can be used in so many different ecosystems and departments as well. So I think that was the biggest switch for me that I did not expect to happen.
Overall, just said the hype about NFTs and the hype about the term Web3. Even my parents talk about Web3 and, say, wow, what's that? And they want to understand it. So this was a big, great experience for me in the last, let's say, year or even months, to say, wow, people talk about these topics that we talk about on a daily basis. So this is something, even people asked me back then, what do you think about NFTs? And I think NFTs have a lot of use cases, not only the use cases we talk about today or about specifically in this conference, but I always said, yes, it breaks through the mainstream, right? People know or at least use NFTs, although they maybe still don't understand the deep technology behind it, but they use it. And that's what excited me the most, that we actually reached the hype or created a hype that goes to the mainstream.
Yeah, I think I would probably flip that question a little bit. Nothing surprises me anymore in this space. It's, things can happen at a rapid pace, and, you have certain expectations, but then they're hardly ever absolutely accurate. And, we've been talking about the mainstream for a while, and I think we're still not there. We're certainly seeing it in mainstream media cover it a lot, which is not always a good thing, because they half the time do not know what they're talking about. But yeah, I think we're still. But it is really cool to have people go, oh, I've started using this, and you're like, oh, that's awesome, right? Like, my mum's probably a bit unsavvy to do it, but my sister's constantly calling me up and like. But yeah, I love that. I love the adoption piece, but yeah, nothing surprised me. I've been over surprised. Not.
Yeah, I could see that with everything you've seen transform and evolve in the space, and it's been really interesting for me because I began my career in beauty tech. I worked with Benefit Cosmetics, major influencers like Michelle Phan, many large beauty retail companies like LVMH, and seeing just how quickly NFTs has evolved, and like the interest in bigger brands and bigger companies to be getting involved in like that first wave, and seeing like Dolce & Gabbana, mint a collection, and having these other major brands that are very like internally political and like hesitant for super fast innovative change really be dipping their feet in has been super fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and we have a lot of conversations with brands and companies outside of Web3 who are like, how do we get in? Looking to get in certain ways, and buy land in the metaverse and all of this sort of stuff. But it has to be done the right way. Like there has to be a real outcome. Like why are they doing that, and what are they doing it for? If it's just to kind of make money and milk the most out of their fans or their then not necessarily the right way. If they're actually creating added value, then but I think there's strategy conversations to be had around that, and how we manage that, and how we build that as a community, as internally as Web3, and how we help people come into the space.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting, I think, with like the sentiment of how everything is interconnected, because right now, for example, I'm advising one of the fastest growing metaverse games, and the founder, he was like C-suite with Acorns and Honey, which have grown to over billion-dollar valuations. And just because it's a metaverse game, they're really starting to think about how to integrate deeper into crypto NFTs. Like just isolating in like the metaverse niche really isn't good enough long term. And so it's been really interesting seeing how more mainstream companies and brands are pushed to think farther ahead about their greater implications in the space. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, metaverse is still, to be truly valuable and truly useful, I think we're still a couple of years off the technology being able to support that. Like we were saying, for infrastructure, I think we're still probably 2 years away maybe for that to be properly supported in the way that we expect it to be used. So, you expect to go in and have this great experience. At the moment, we're not quite there, but we'll get there.
I mean, to this point, I don't hope we drift too much off of the question, but I mean, I think also people need to understand what a metaverse exactly is, right? Even Meta, the company, X or Facebook, builds their metaverse. I don't even think they really understand what metaverse in our Web3 terms is really meant to be. And that's why I think, like, we know we have the vision, it just takes time to build the tech for it, but I think, not to be too bullish on this, but we in the Web3 space know exactly what a not everyone, but I mean the people that are building the metaverse, it's there are key points, and so it doesn't turn out to just be another game. There are specific elements why the blockchain needs to be part of metaverse and so on. Why do you need to own the data in a metaverse? So there are different requirements to build this.
Actually, just to follow on that as well, I think there's just so many opinions from people already in the industry how they imagine the metaverse to be like. And I think, I'm actually curious, what do you guys think the metaverse should be like? Because for me, it's sort of just next level of entertainment, which we can actually enter using the technology that we don't have just yet, but hopefully we'll evolve to that. But I cannot imagine myself actually just living in a virtual world, like Ready Player Me, for instance. So I'm just curious about your opinion as well.
It's a great question.
I mean, yes, it's definitely an entertainment, right? It's like also like games are entertainment. But I'm quoting here Marvin Tong actually from Fala Network, because he gave a great speech where he actually puts out why a metaverse is a metaverse. And there are 4 points. I mean, first of all, you need to be able to own your data, right? That's why we use the blockchain. You need to be able to build your own land. And in a game, if you step into a game, the game designers design the game for you. So you step into a pre-made environment. In the metaverse, it looks different because you are the owner, you created your own. Then we have everything open source, right? That's different than a normal game. The code is open source. Everyone can see what's actually happening there. The servers, no one can shut down the metaverse. It's decentralized, so no one can say this game doesn't exist anymore. Then we had the fourth point. I'm just... I think I just forgot it at the moment. But these are actually the key points that differentiate already a metaverse against a general game.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think, you mentioned that you don't imagine yourself living virtually. I don't think that anyone will do. I mean, maybe, but you know, it's enhancing your experience as a human and being able to interact with things in a space that you might not be able to. So, you know, we're very lucky in that we get to travel here and we get to speak to lots of amazing people, but then there's plenty of people who live in far-flung places that want to learn, or, you know, one of our investments at the moment is education or edutainment, and I think, you know, that's a really key area where metaverse can excel, because it's engagement, it's incentives, it's, you know, it's all of these things, and so yeah, I think it's giving an experience to people that maybe wouldn't necessarily have that access or that experience. I think that's a really that'll be a really important piece as we go forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. Like what should the metaverse look like? Because I think the way that kind of Facebook branded it for the mainstream was this digital world where you can create, explore, be a different version of yourself, interact with things, go to places, live your life almost in this virtual world. And this pandemic, I think a lot of people got a taste of what that could be like. A lot of people were behind screens. The way they related to others were behind screens. And the mainstream started like exploring deeper into what a virtual life looked and felt like. And I think there definitely should be more integration. You know, as humanity has evolved and developed these different tools, it's like we've needed to better understand how to like go outside and like relate better with our natural world as well as our technology. And I think there should definitely be more conversations around design, around like how to better interface with our technology to have the best of both worlds and not just leave our beautiful natural world behind as we, you know, focus all of the innovation in the direction of tech.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you think the progress of women in this space will impact the mainstream over the next 5 years?
I think, sorry. I think how it will actually impact the industry is, I think women naturally will bring more topics like mental health or like healthcare in general. I think they will really touch upon those topics which are not currently really discussed in the industry, and I think those are really important topics to cover as well. So mixing those two, I think we're gonna have really nice and diverse environment, and I think it's just necessary and needed for women to enter this space to bring that last touch to it. So.
Yeah, look, I think I'm of the opinion that it shouldn't really matter whether you're male or female, what you bring to the space. It's that you bring something. And of course, yeah, there are different areas where kind of women excel and men excel, and they cross over too. So, you know, I think that it's also about industry, like I was saying before, about adoption from outside of Web3 into Web2. So there's a ton of powerful women that work in Web2 that I think, you know, we could easily onboard into Web3 and outside brands. So I think that's, you know, an interesting perspective. You know, I recently been working with a company who their like whole dev team is like female, and you know, I love to see that. You know, and for them, they even say that their output's better. I don't know.
I think I'm
But-
effective.
No, I wouldn't say that, but you know, I think there's a ton of things women can bring. You know, everybody's different, but and everybody has their skills, and I think so long as you you kind of hone in what you specialize at and what your interests are, then anybody, male or female, can bring great stuff to Web3.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Just like touching on the standpoint I made before, that technology doesn't have a gender, but we're also building a new movement, a new space, which not only belongs to the technology. So with opening up or explaining that Web3 is actually a movement and what we are building here, not only building technology, we also need people, that hire people that have psychological understanding, like a lot of a skill set that maybe females still have more than men, and I know there's still, a difference between our skill set, but this doesn't matter in the space, and that's why it opens up actually the mainstream to women, or let's say women do provide the mainstream to Web3, however you want to see it. So that's actually cool, and of course, as you said, it's not 50-50 yet, but we can do something about this, and I think yeah, that's another question as well. But yeah, so that's how I see it in the space.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's like four, I say this quite a lot. So there's like probably like four kind of fundamentals to most humans, right? That's what you care about. So it's like your output being your work or your creativity, whatever that is. It's your community or your connections. It's your identity, and then it's your finances, right? And Web3 really improves most of those, gives you more sovereignty over those. So everybody cares about it. Somebody yesterday pointed out to me that I didn't include love, but that's also obviously part of connections. But yeah, so I think that works for everybody, every human, right? And I always call Web3 the human technology because of those kind of fundamentals around what's important.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think too, just the potential to lead by example is so huge, and even just, being part of the EAK team for this event and being at team meetings and like 60% of the team is female, and just really seeing the change in real life and being a part of this change, and just seeing how amazing that is. And like typically in tech, I'm always on teams with men. It's usually just me and the guys, and it's really amazing, like the well-rounded perspective and energy that comes into the way we create when there is more balance. And I think as more projects show this, more projects embody this, more people see this, the rest of tech will be able to truly learn from that example. Yeah. So you had a very interesting second thought on this, and would you like to go ahead and say that?
How we can solve the problem, actually? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's how to, bring more women actually in the space. I think we have to start at the root, which is I say it's not all about the technology, but somehow you need to be passionate about building something in the space. I would say that's also what combines or brings us here together. And this is where I would say we need to start at the educational part. So we see already, I just had a conversation outside where someone asked me, what did I do before blockchain? And this is interesting that we still ask this question, but I believe in some years we won't ask this question anymore, because people start to study blockchain, We have master degrees, bachelor degrees laid out already, where people study this, and then they studied IT and then go into work in IT their whole life. So it is, of course, a more specialized field, but we are building up to this education at the moment as well. And what we can do right now is, as companies or investors and so on, going into the space, going to universities, going to schools and partnering with them and explaining actually through workshops, through small events, hackathons, what we are doing. And we as Fala Network do this already, and I really believe that this is what we can do at the moment until we have more laid out educational system for this new type of internet. Back then also people didn't understand what the internet is until they created IT study programs and so on. So what we can do right now is really just pushing it out and going into the young, even younger generation, because we are already the young generation, to explain them about what we are doing and get them excited about it, because they really want to learn, but sometimes they don't know how to start. And building this cooperation between companies, even startups, as well as universities and educational programs is what we can do at the moment from my perspective.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of people with their antennas up and interested in what's happening in Web3, but sometimes, and kind of to your point about design and interface earlier, it's sometimes that learning curve is a bit steep and scary. You know, people come into a platform and they get scared off. And so education's key for everybody. And I think there's a lot of initiatives that are coming up, and I think we're hopefully going to do a lot of work towards that. In fact, Matterblock's working on something kind of in the same way to try and bring more people in particular young women who are working in computer science and things like that.
And just to add on this, maybe even on the technical side, breaking down the languages a bit more. I think it's still early, and even blockchain developers, the blockchain developers that call themselves developers, maybe only write in Solidity, right? And the Solidity is completely new language, as you all know. So they had to learn this. Now in the Polkadot ecosystem, for example, we mainly develop with Rust, and Rust is a pretty old language based on C++. So you don't need to learn a whole new blockchain language, but you still need to understand what languages do I need to use, and maybe we can, break this down on this level even, that the developers and engineers also don't have too big of a fear to actually get into the space to learn and to build.
Yeah, and break down the jargon too, right? Because we all talk, in our echo chamber, we all talk and sometimes when I try and do these talks, I try and kind of speak in a language that I hope everybody can understand, rather than kind of use a lot of technical Web3 terms or jargon. If people are watching on the streams or whatever, I want them to be able to understand what I'm sort of talking about. And so that's another thing. We have the technical side, but then we also have all this. It's like suddenly, as soon as we've invented one term, we've invented another one, right? Like, and then you're like, what is this?
That's true.
So I think that's also somewhere we need to improve.
I think I totally agree with both of you. But also maybe just to add on that, I think now we're building so many educational platforms, and of course, hopefully we'll get also at universities as programs, etc. But I also think it's important to keep in mind that even with the internet, not everybody really understands how the internet works at the back end. We just need to know how to use it safely and how to operate it at the front end. So I think that switch will also happen with blockchain and Web3, where the users will only know how to operate with the front end too. So.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And being one of the individuals that transition into Web3, I've just spoken to so many people about it, ranging across the full spectrum of age. And the sentiment that I come across the most is most people are intrigued by Web3 because of the exponential potential to make money and reach financial liberation. And across the board, like I see it in NFTs, artists that before would never even want to think about anything technical are suddenly like, oh, I will do the work to understand NFTs because I see there's a great potential in this. And I think it's really interesting because, and another question I have for y'all is like, how do we understand what is the carrot that dangles, that kind of draws people into this industry, and how do we leverage that in a good way to support them and like easily like help them enter the space?
Well, you started with a good example there, right? Like artists. So traditionally, as an artist, it might be quite difficult to reach an audience, right? You have your physical art hung up in a gallery, and you might see it online, but it's much more difficult to, I guess, reach an audience, and it's much more difficult to build a community. And then you also have always this middle person, usually in between, who's kind of shafting one person or the other, and now this is opened up to allow that two-way connection directly with an artist, and that, I think, that community aspect and that kind of building aspect, I think that's where the, I guess, incentive should be for people coming. And then it's kind of like anything. It's like I founded my own companies like many years ago, and one of the things that people always say to you is you do good work, or you do passionate work, and you do something you love, and you build something you love, and if you're doing it the right way, then the money comes. So, so whilst obviously people, have certain agendas and rationale around that, I think that still holds true, right? Like if that's why you're doing it, and you're doing it because you want to reach a greater audience and more people to see your work, in the example of an artist, or engage with you, that's the right way to do it, and happy accident to make some money, right? So,
Just want to add to your point where you said, like, regarding the artists, I mean, artists are actually a complete different crowd than we as technologists or even people working in tech, right? They think differently, they create differently. They can't just create code like we do, or they need, be in a creative flow and so on. So what I find very interesting that NFTs are now the use case mainly for artists, for the people that actually, create it differently, and they still need to understand the tech at the moment. So that's a little challenge that we still have to figure out, and I think marketplaces, interfaces, as well as education can push it, that an artist that maybe don't, as you just said, they don't want to understand the technology behind, they want to use an NFT because they see how it enhances and actually benefits them as an artist, because they do it for the people, not for, let's say, another party that takes money from them. But we are still at a very challenging point in NFTs for artists actually at the moment, that they can use it and use it right and understand it.
Yeah, 100%. I think we'll get there to where it does, where you don't touch. We're not going to talk about Web3 as a concept in a few years' time, because it'll just be the technology that sits under everything, and everybody touches it, and it's easy to use. But yeah, to your point, I think there's still that scariness in the same way we were talking about before, that bridge. But sorry.
Absolutely. I think also what I really love about Web3 and what we're trying to build here is connecting the creative side to the technical side, because I think that bridge was not really made before, but using Web3 or being in Web3, that bridge was completed. So now the artists who actually love their art and want to create, they don't really have to worry about making income anymore in the business way, because they have the tools that we're building for them right now to use. And that way they can leverage their art in the most business-oriented way possible. So.
Nice.
Absolutely. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. I do want to open up the conversation to y'all and see if there's any pressing questions that you'd like to ask these lovely panelists. And please just raise your hand if there are, and we will call on you.
We could talk forever if you like.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I always get a bit nervous when we open up for questions, because I know people are like,
Yeah. Well, if there are no questions, like one that I've been really thinking about as a woman entering the space and starting to get involved, like, wow, there's just so much to learn. It's insane, and it's like changing it at such a fast pace. And a lot of when I talk to a lot of people in the space, they're like, oh, get on Twitter, get on Discord, like, just dive in. And I think for the people who are doing that, it just feels a little bit overwhelming. And so the question is, like, do you feel like there's any life hacks for the newbies or crypto curious and those who want to start learning very quickly and efficiently to start onboarding into the space?
I think the easiest and the fastest way how to get in the space is just to connect people who are already in the space. So, go on LinkedIn, go on social media, follow the people who are the experts in the space. Experts, I call it, but you know what I mean. And just learn from them, learn from what they share. Try to understand the environment and how people think within Web3. And I think that's just the fastest and the most efficient way to start. So.
Yeah, and I think based on what you just said, like, once you talk to the people, I think you can differentiate already very easily, or have a better understanding of the landscape itself. There are a lot of different, we call it Web3 space, but there are a lot of different ecosystems, right? I talked about the Polkadot ecosystem, where you then have like 100 different parachains, and then you pick where do I want to work with. So I think what is also good, recommendation, once you get a feeling out of it, to say, okay, which ecosystem am I most interested in, because they provide a specific vision, they're focused on security, interoperability. I think everyone works in multi-chain approach at the moment, but to look also at the founders of these meta protocols and layer 1s, layer 0, however you want to call it, and then from there, my story is that I started as an ambassador, right? Go find if they have ambassador program, maybe to see what they onboard you and go into the educational path, and then you actually get connected pretty easily, because you understand who is working in the space in this specific ecosystem, and then you can pick and choose, actually, because everyone is looking to hire people, right? So once you made your step and educated yourself into the space where you think this is the right one I want to work with, you're actually taking if you make a good job by everyone, I would say.
Yeah, and I totally agree with both your points. I think, you know, hone in on what you are interested in, hone in on what you enjoy doing in your normal life, and you'll find something in Web3 that allows you to do that, because there is a lane kind of for everybody, right? And like you say, there's all the ecosystems, but there's also, you know, different parts of Web3. We have NFTs, we have DeFi, we have we have all of these different areas that are growing and being developed. So, you know, the first thing I would say would be to hone in on who you are and go back to those 4 points that I made about what's your kind of fundamental you know, values or importance. It's what's the most important one of those, and hone in and kind of go deep on one of those verticals, I guess we would call it, and then, you know, that'll open it up. Kind of naturally will open up to the rest of the space as you kind of. It's addictive, right? Like everybody says, it's like, you know, once you're in, once you're down that rabbit hole, you're in the burrows and you're going everywhere. Right, so. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think so often, like the major buzzwords we hear about are NFTs, DAOs, etc. And just curious what y'all think are the most underrated parts of Web3 that have the most potential.
So DAOs is an interesting one, because I think there's a lot of opportunity, but tooling around them is not there. So, and they're still an experiment, right? So kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. But I do think there's a real big opportunity for those in the future. I am less bullish on, you know, games. I think there's some great stuff happening in blockchain gaming, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, so I think DAOs is really interesting, and yeah, that's probably underrated. I think games are overrated and DAOs are maybe underrated because they have a lot of problems right now. But there's a lot of potential. And again, back to infrastructure, picks and shovels.
Right, yeah.
Still underrated. It's not sexy from the outside kind of retail investor point of view, but it's needed, so yeah.
Yeah, infrastructure, definitely. And then, as I said before, I mean, privacy and security in general, right? For the Web3 space, I mean, we hear a lot of like bridge hacks at the moment. You know, in Polkadot, we have a natively built-in format actually called XCM, where you can securely send transaction between parachains, which is different than a bridge that can be hacked, because the XCM format can be hacked the same as difficult as the blockchain. You know, for example, these kind of formats in the infrastructure basis, as I said, need to be more developed for the Web3 space, but even for the Web2 space. I mean, you can use blockchain to secure data, you know, used for any CRM system or whatever database or so. So I think the term of security that blockchain in general provides to the Web2 world or open world, as well as security in the Web3 space, are still a subject that are underrated, and we still need to work more on this.
Absolutely, and to touch upon that, I think talking of security, I'm really waiting for the moment when blockchain and smart contracts really arrive into real estate, and then we can really see the use cases within that, because I think we can create so many different ways how we can leverage, for example, smart contracts or NFTs or other platforms we have in Web3 into just different broader audience. So I think real estate for me and healthcare would be the second industries that I'm really waiting for to enter.
Real life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting kind of like where we've started, and I wonder if it's going to seem like a parody to like where the space evolves in the coming years, and like how valuable this technology becomes as we navigate those challenges in the world. But yeah, it's been so lovely chatting with y'all. I think we're out of time now, although could do this all day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.